Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let me just say publicly to you, I appreciate the fact that on these issues we've been able to work so closely together, and I'm very grateful for that. Two, what drives someone to set themselves aflame? I think I know the answer, but I want you to say so that the American government, the Chinese government, this is fundamentally an immoral government. The Chinese people are wonderful people. The government is fundamentally immoral. They are fundamentally evil. We know what they're doing to Tibetans. We know what they're doing to the Catholic Church. We know what they're doing to the Protestant Church. We know what they're doing to the Uyghurs. They're spying against us. They're doing all these bad things. I mean, they have the Nobel Prize winner in jail, and his wife is under house arrest. It was just a young woman that left Mr. Pitts and me, whose husband is in jail for almost just sending something over the internet. It's a fundamentally immoral, evil government. Now, secondly, this government's going to fall. This government, it is like they have found Nicholas Ceausescu's playbook, and they don't realize that Ceausescu fell, and they're going to fall because the Chinese people want freedom. There's a cavity inside everybody, and it's yearning for freedom. Tibet will be free. You may not want to say it. Tibet will be separate. Tibet is not part of China. Tibet is a separate nation and not part of China. So they are going to fall. So, but what motivates? What do you think drives a young Tibetan monk or nun to literally give their life and set them aflame?
Mr. Chairman, that's the fundamental question. Human being consider life as precious. Given a choice, anyone would like to live, then die. When someone dies, and dies in such agonizing way, this suffering inside and outside ought to be very, very strong and unbearable. That one is willing to give of one's precious life to demonstrate the desperate sufferings of the Tibetan people indicates that the hardline policies of the Chinese government is not working, and they want a separate, a different arrangement whereby Tibetans can administer their own region, whereby Tibetans can protect, preserve and promote their own culture and their identity. That's what Tibetans want. These are the desperate cries of the Tibetan people. So your question is very valid and to the point, sir.
I wonder if Hu Jintao realizes that this will be on his conscience. When he meets his maker, this will be on his conscience. He is, frankly, as you know perhaps as well as anyone, he is the author of the crackdown in Tibet. He was the one who, when he was there, was he not in Tibet?
He was the party secretary of Tibet when martial law was introduced in Tibet in early 1989.
So Hu Jintao is literally the guy who is responsible. You can say other people in the government are responsible, but he is the guy who is responsible. And interesting enough, about 2 months ago, he invited President Bashir, the indicted war criminal from Khartoum, Sudan, for a red carpet meeting. And so the two of them together, they were both almost war criminals in some respect. Mr. Chairman, what I think we ought to do, and I will do it next year, if Nepal doesn't grant these exit visas and the Foreign Operations Bill comes up for a vote, or it is considered in the Appropriation Committee on which I serve, and I serve on that subcommittee, I'm going to offer an amendment to zero out any foreign aid from the United States government to Nepal. Because if America, what is the democracy center, is willing to take people in, people who will be good citizens, and they rely on us. Someone said it's perhaps in the hundreds of millions of dollars, and for the record, we will put it in. And when I go back to my office, we're going to do a letter to the ambassador from Nepal and tell them if they do not grant these, and if I stand alone, I stand alone. But if they do not grant these by the time this bill comes up next year, we're just not going to cut them. We're going to zero them out because this has nothing to do. Now, I know they don't want to be too sympathetic to the Chinese government. And frankly, the Nepal government, I was in Kathmandu and saw the way they treat some of the Tibetans. It's not very good. And frankly, and who come over the mountain and come down in, if they're not willing to do it, then they don't share our values. And if they don't share our values, we do not want to share our dollars. And so we will send you a letter. My staff will draft a letter and to the ambassador and tell him, it's your country. You have every right to do what you want to do there, although we don't agree with it. But if you continue to deny the exit visas, we will deny every dollar. And as long as I serve in this Congress, we will offer that amendment. We will offer that amendment. And I think we will eventually be successful. And I think you should urge this administration to put pressure on. And our ambassador over there we will also send a copy of the letter to him or her to advocate and be an advocate for it. But I do appreciate, I said to my wife tonight, what drives, and I think I know, what drives, and I'll tell you something, the Chinese government has turned Lhasa into not a very good Tibetan city. They have bulldozed large portions of Lhasa, and they're doing everything they can. And Tibetan people are mild-mannered people, and what they fundamentally want is what that cavity in each of us want is a freedom. And when I was there, frankly, no one said anything negative about the Chinese government. They were more looking in terms of what they wanted for their own freedom. So this government will fall. In 1986, the Polish ambassador Spazowski from Poland, who defected, walked out of the Polish embassy, walked into the White House. He came out to my house for dinner in 1986 so my kids could understand about communism. And he basically painted a picture that the communists were moving so fast and so aggressively that they would take over the world. In 1986, Ronald Reagan called them the evil empire. In 83, said tear down that wall. And we saw that government collapse. And I think unless the Chinese government changes, they will collapse. And lastly, anyone with the American businesses who are aiding and abetting those cameras up on the buildings in downtown Lhasa, the American companies who I won't mention by name now, who are participating, who are helping, when they write the history of this, it's like the American companies and Western companies that cooperated, like IBM cooperated with the Nazis. Someone will write a book of who has been cooperating with this fundamentally evil government. Is it not an evil government that has 25 Catholic bishops under house arrest, Protestant pastors rounding them up, putting the Nobel Prize winner under house arrest, Reba Kadir, and they're bold. Mr. Chairman, they're so bold, they came out to Fairfax County and spied on Reba Kadir, and they have 2 of her kids under house arrest. And so, I hope, and I believe that, and I'm 72 years old, I believe in my lifetime we will see this government collapse. We'll send you the letter that we send, and you should aggressively advocate to tell the Secretary of State, who cares about these issues, I am sure, and them that they should put pressure on the Nepalese government to grant those exit visas. So anyway, thank you for this, and thank you, Mr.
Well, thank you. I want to thank my colleague, and I think his suggestion of a letter to the President and Prime Minister of Nepal probably is a good idea, and we could do that in a bipartisan way. And I think following that letter, maybe what would be appropriate for this commission to do is to call the ambassador to Nepal in here, and have a discussion. And then I agree with you. We need to know what the administration is doing to try to resolve this humanitarian crisis. And again, I mean the issue is simply a matter of exit visas. And it shouldn't be that difficult. And and if all that fails, I agree with my co-chair that maybe we need to start bringing legislation to the floor to bring the the message home more loudly and clearly. So at this time, either my colleague, Mr. Pitts, I don't know if he has any more questions or comments.
Well, let me just ask the Prime Minister if you could prioritize what you would like to see this administration and our Department of State to do regarding the aims of the Tibetan people. What would your priorities be if you could list them?
Obviously, the cries of the 11 self-immolators make it very clear to restore freedom in Tibet and return of His Holiness the Dalai Lama are the aspirations of the Tibetan people inside Tibet. To achieve that, if the U.S. government could intervene and continue to press the Chinese government to have dialogue with the envoys of His Holiness the Dalai Lama to resolve the issue peacefully, that will be a welcome gesture. And also, there is also Tibet Policy Act passed in 1991. I'm sure there's some revision needs to be done. And if the Congress can look into it and revise it and pass it, and the consulate in Lhasa has been talked about, that if you could have a consulate in Lhasa, then the U.S. diplomats can monitor the situation inside Tibet, and that will also be welcome. And through the U.S. Congress and U.S. government, humanitarian aid is provided to Tibetan people for all these years, for which we are very grateful. And all the aid that is granted to Tibetan people are utilized very, very well, including for those Tibetans who flee from Tibet and transit through Nepal to Delhi and Dharamsala. We utilize funding very well. And we would like to claim that the Tibetan administration is very effective in delivering welfare projects, and for which we are very grateful. And as far as this 14th Kasha or my administration is concerned, education will be #1 priority, because I, for one, as I said, grew up in a very small village in a humble background with an acre of land and few cows and dozen or so chicken, and I went to study in Tibetan refugee school, partly aided by American or European person as part of the scholarship. Then went to Delhi University, and then got a Fulbright scholarship to come to Harvard Law School to do my master's in law. And then I did my doctorate there. And then they appointed me as a fellow and senior fellow. So I spent the last 16 years here in the U.S. and mainly at Harvard Law School. Now then, last year I got, I went about campaigning, a bit American style or Indian style or modern style. I was criticized for that, and some gave me credit also. But then I got elected, and then I have left America and left Harvard, my job, to return to Dharamsala to serve Tibet and Tibetan people, because it is our responsibility to continue the struggle. His Holiness the Dalai Lama and elder generation of Tibetans have worked very, very hard. They have contributed so much, their blood and sweat, for this movement, for this struggle. And it's incumbent upon the younger generation to continue the struggle and move forward and make sure that the aspiration and the dying wishes of Tibetan people, hundreds and thousands of them, do not go in vain. And as Congressman Frank will mention, I do see in my lifetime, and hopefully in your lifetime, that Tibetans will return to Tibet with freedom, and His Holiness the Dalai Lama in the Potala Palace, his rightful palace.
Thank you. That is our hope. It is an honor to have you here today. It's an honor to serve with these two outstanding chairmen of this commission, and we thank you for your testimony.
Thank you very much.
And I just want to close again by thanking you for your powerful presentation here today. I also want to thank the many people who are working on behalf of the cause that you have espoused here today. Todd Stein with the International Campaign for Tibet has been incredible. Yodon Toner is a person I've gotten to know who's been a very powerful woman who is very committed to this cause. And I'm really, I'll just conclude by saying I'm really glad we had this hearing, because you've got us all focused, and that's the whole point of these meetings. And we wish you luck, and we thank you very much for your testimony and for your presence here today.
Thank you, Chairperson and members of the Commission. And really, thank you for holding this hearing, because it gives voice to those people who are dying, and many more might die actually as weeks and months unfold. And please continue your support. Your support has been incredible so far, and really, really appreciated by 6 million Tibetans inside and outside Tibet. And with that note, I would also like to invite all of you, including the staff members, to come to Dharamsala. It's a beautiful hill station. And if you come there, you will enjoy not just the scenic beauty, but also the living culture of Tibetan people. And you will witness a small Tibet in midst of Indian people and India. So please do come to Dharamsala, which is where Tibetan administration is based. Until then, I would like to say thank you very much, and Tesh Tile and Pyo Gyalo.
Thank you. Thank you.